Good day, goeiedag, fellow South Africans. Well, today I had the privilege of having an hour talking to Simon Roche from Suidlanders. And we discuss a lot of things because it takes a lot, you can do a lot in an hour. But please have a look at the video. We talk about what Suidlanders is all about. I'll be attaching a link below so you can actually contact them direct if you're in South Africa. I recommend that you get involved with them because they are the most organized defense group in the country. And right now, South Africa is in a state of civil war. Now, remember to subscribe to be kept informed. And Sunday night, 8 p.m. Johannesburg time, we'll be online talking about some options for South Africans. Take care.
Yeah, I just had a brief look at it, Scott, while I was faffing with the Skype. Yeah, those were the parliamentary land hearings.
Okay. And what do you think about what's going on now with, these squatters just going onto the land?
Well, it's not exceptional, Scott. I mean, the incidents of that happening all over the show. And also, I had a double check on the Noordkanaal best in South Africa.
Yeah.
And they're not reporting it as anything exceptional.
Okay. All right. Well, look, what I'll do is I'll get our conversation started. I haven't actually started recording for the live stream yet, but I will now. What I'll do in the video that I put up on my channel is I'll just give a bit of an intro before we start this chat, so I can introduce you.
Right.
And then I'll then continue from basically this point on. Okay, enjoy.
Okay, 100%. I'm just around here because I see that the light is bad and it's bothering me even if it's not bothering you, if you know what I mean. So let's see if I can do a better job of...
Yeah, if you had a light shining in your face, that would be better because you're a bit dark with the light behind you. Yeah, that's much better.
100 times.
That's much better. Much, much better. Okay. All right. Hi, Simon. Wait till you've taken your puff. I'll start again.
There you go. Finished now.
Okay. Hi, Simon. First of all, congratulations.
Hi, Scott. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And first of all, congratulations on your inspirational work to stop the genocide of white South Africans. I have family in South Africa, so my blood is tied up with yours and all other South Africans who are facing this terrible dilemma. Can you please tell me a bit about your own personal background? What got you involved with establishing Suidlanders or being involved with Suidlanders?
Well, Scott, I'm just an ordinary English boy from the south coast of Natal, steeped in the fishing culture. And I, a few years ago, began to be very, very perturbed by what is happening in South Africa. And I often reduce it to the metaphor of a trajectory, a ball flying through the air. The thing that bothers me the most is not that the sky is falling on our heads, as it were, today, but there is a brewing crisis that gets worse year by year, and our state declines year by year. And there is nothing at all to suggest that it's going to get better. This ball flying through the air is going to stop in mid-air or even slow down for that matter. The pace is picking up, and there's certainly no suggestion that it's going to reverse its trajectory.
Well, I just think the ball is getting bigger, if anything.
Yeah, it is. You know, year by year we have the sort of politically correct narrative of the new South African rainbow nation reinforced, shoved down our throat all over again. Every time there's a crisis, there's always an excuse. There's always a reason why it's not the fault of the African National Congress, not the fault of the president, not the fault of the government, not the fault of the new South African radio station. There's no end of politically correct excuses. But that doesn't really change anything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Now, tell me, what is Suidlanders? Just give me a brief overview of what Suidlanders is.
Briefly, Suidlanders is an initiative, an emergency plan initiative, initiated by a man called Gustav Müller 18 years ago to implement a civil defense plan to safeguard the welfare of white people under international law in the event of a race-based civil war. In other words, we are really just an organization devoted to preparing for a severe crisis in South Africa, which we believe comes nearer day by day.
Yeah, I can understand that. And what are the objectives of Suidlanders?
Well, our objectives are to look, the international laws, particularly but not only the protocols additional to the Geneva Conventions, make specific provision for identifiable ethnic groups in such a circumstances I've described to gather together and to withdraw themselves from a conflict. And so our only objective is to withdraw from a conflict in the event of a conflict in which our people are targeted. Julius Malema has spoken from time to time about cutting the throat of whiteness. Recently, when I say recently, on Thursday, the 3rd of November last year, I believe, our Minister of Defense said that if white people protest peacefully, as they did, against rape and murder on farms once again, I emphasize it was a peaceful protest to which he was referring, they will bring a genocide on themselves. So when you have the Minister of Defense of a country saying, listen, we won't have this specific ethnic group complaining about the rate of murder and rape pertaining to this ethnic group, if they do it again, we're going to kill them all. Clearly there's a need for us to be vigilant, prepared, and sensible about the threat that may be looming on the horizon.
That's totally understandable. And my understanding is that the South African Defence Force is a joke today. I believe a lot of their soldiers are not being paid even because the South African government are in so much trouble.
It's not the soldiers, it's the state-owned defense procurement agency. I think that's the best description I can give. It's called Denel, and it has, like the Electricity Supply Commission and like the water utilities and the South African Airways and every department in government, being run by kleptocrats, really. There's been just an opportunity for milking dry by the people who have run it, with the result that they've run out of cash and they can't pay their managers at this month end. Yeah.
Well, they don't know what they're doing and they're totally out of their depth. But talking about politics, do you have associations with political groups like COPE, who appear now to be on AfriForum's side?
No, we don't. Because our mandate is very strict and very limited, our mandate in terms of what our members believe that we are doing and why they buy into us, so it's an implicit mandate, and our mandate in terms of the laws under which we are constituted, the international laws, we don't get involved in politics as such. We have gained quite a high profile in terms of talking about farm murders and so on, not because that is our sphere of interest, but because we've had to substantiate our raison d'etre, our purpose, our existence. We've had to, in approaching people and saying, please help us, please, give us whatever you can, moral support, financial support, introductions to influential politicians and so on. We've had to justify why we are preparing for a civil war, because nobody would know about the crisis in South Africa. If you were to go by the globalist mainstream media, the whole world would be utterly oblivious of this thing. So we had to go to people and say, look, we really think there's going to be a civil war in South Africa, and here are the reasons. The decline in the rand, the collapse of the economy, the downgrading of our sovereign bonds, the massive unemployment rate, the murders on the farms, and so on and so forth. So that provides a kind of a foundational justification for our purpose. But we are not, as such, a political participant.
Well, I have to tell you, I think that you're already in a civil war, and it's not black on white, it's actually black on black, and it's between the Xhosa and the Zulu and the other South African tribes and all these illegal blacks who've come into the country, and they're fighting each other. And I think that's where a lot of the deaths are happening. And the tragedy is that the white population is a bystander and is being caught up in this incredible carnage that's going on. And, you know, if a black kills a black, there's nothing ever covered. But if you take that incredible coffin case where these two white farmers caught this guy stealing on their farm and they try to push him into a coffin, and that became international news, even though their intention was not to kill the guy. It was just to intimidate the guy and say, hey, get the hell out of our farm. You know, it just shows the duplicity in reporting.
It is. It's absolutely duplicitous. You know, recently we have a word in South Africa which comes from the Islamic term. I say Islamic rather than Arabic because it is an Islamic concept. The kafir, those who are unredeemable, and we have this word in South Africa, kafir, which is the equivalent of Negro in the USA. It is absolutely forbidden. It's unacceptable. It should not be used. It is offensive to people. It hurts people who carry many years, decades, and indeed centuries of grievances. And a woman was the victim of a hijacking, and when the police arrived, she exploded in a tirade of invective, kafir, on and on like this.
Yeah.
And to cut a long story short, she received a 2-year prison sentence for that.
Wow.
There are numerous incidents of far more provocative, inflammatory, I could say, toxic, vicious, poisonous tirades against whites, you know, guys calling for white children to be killed, on Facebook, guys calling for whites to be excoriated, you know, to be skinned alive, and so on and so forth. And these guys generally, well, certainly never get jail terms, and generally get a slap on the wrist being told to say sorry, you know, to write a public apology on Facebook or something like that. And in terms of what you've just been describing, this unfairness, this politically correct unfairness is now pervasive in our society. And the example that you use is just one of many such examples.
Yeah. Well, look at also Malema and Zuma singing Kill the Boer.
Exactly.
When has that ever been on international news?
They will never talk about it, Scott. You know, people sometimes, particularly white South Africans, miss the point of this thing. And they you know, wail and moan and gnash their teeth over the injustice of it. But as I endeavor to explain to people, imagine if you were the BBC and you'd spent 40 years ramming down the throats of the world the benevolence of St. Nelson Mandela, the altruism of the African National Congress, and the necessary success, the fact that the new South African Rainbow Nation couldn't possibly fail. And you now have to confront, as they do, the realities of the new South African Rainbow Nation. The best thing to do for them is to be quiet. It makes perfect sense. It's not as inexplicable as it may seem. These guys are going to look like absolute fools. If they start admitting that the great campaign of the last half a century, namely the destruction of apartheid and the implementation of the new South African Rainbow Nation, the greatest international campaign of the world, is an absolute failure, people in the world are going to begin to think to themselves, well, you know, the United Nations, the Clintons, and BBC also told me that X, Y, and Z were benevolent, were supporting, and we should all change our values in terms of whatever it may be, taking Jesus out of schools, lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter what my values are. It doesn't matter what my perspective is. By and large, if these guys are seen to be absolute bulldusters, they're going to lose their place in the global dialogue between people, which is what they're doing already. You know, guys like yourself are completely usurping them. I read an article the other day in which, you know, quite a statistical, scholarly article, in which it revealed that the viewership of CNN has dropped by 2/3 over the past 15 or so years. 2/3, just imagine. Because people are watching Scott Bolson for the truth rather than that lot.
The fake news network.
Yeah, it's part of the globalist new world order. It sounds all very spooky and, you know, neurotic and perhaps hysterical, paranoid, but it's a reality.
Well, I have to say, thanks to Trump, the world has woken up. Now, do you have any thoughts about how post-Mugabe Zimbabwe is now offering white farmers compensation for their stolen farmlands?
It's a short-term political ploy, Scott. You know, it's a bit like having an affair. If you have an affair within a marriage, the other spouse will always wonder when it's going to happen again. And similarly, I don't think that this kind of recanting on the part of the Zimbabweans is an indefinite repentance. You know, I don't think that they fixed themselves and now the whites are going to get the land back and they're going to farm it forever and ever and ever, and 6 generations from now we're all going to be celebrating an undisturbed peace, you know, over 6 generations. I don't think so. I think that it's quite apparent that the Zimbabweans are very much subject to their own circumstances. If in 25 years' time, or 20 or 15 or 12, there is a necessity for them to break their vow, as it were, with the farmers who are returning now, they will do it, unhesitatingly. So I don't take it seriously at all, not even slightly.
Wow, okay. Because Zimbabwe is a complete basket case today. Now, do you feel that South Africa will follow Zimbabwe's collapse into chaos if farmlands are expropriated without compensation? I guess I know the answer, but I'd like to hear it from you.
Yes, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. A chap by the name of, I must get it right because he's one of those guys who goes by all four of his names. Something like Charles Philip Mark Horn recently wrote a piece in which he did a very scholarly analysis of South Africa's land carrying capacity. Our land's carrying capacity is about 2.5 million. That is to say, the nature of South African soil and the climate and the topography and so on and so forth is such that without advanced modern farming methods, only about 2.5 million people can be sustained by the land. Without irrigation and fertilizers and so on and so forth, you can't feed 55 or 60 million people from South African soil. So the simple reality is this: if you put a number of hopelessly unqualified, if I may say so, people onto the land to farm it, to provide the food for the land, the likelihood is that they're not going to be able to succeed. It just doesn't make sense. It would be like me entering the Tour de France tomorrow with some kind of Munchausen syndrome, believing that maybe I could just about win. The maths doesn't make sense either, Scott. Let's say there are about 55 to 60 million people in South Africa. It's a subject of heated debate right now because nobody believes our statistics department's ability to count
all the illegals.
Exactly, and more than that too. But I won't go into it now. Let's say we have about 60 million people in South Africa. Let's say that only 1/10 of them are somehow eligible for land. So now you've got 10 million people going on to the 25,000, I beg your pardon, white-owned commercial farms that are left. Do the maths. It doesn't make any sense. Every guy's going to get a piece of land half the size of a garden plot in Sydney.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't make any sense. And these people who are in charge of this thing, the South African Communist Party, as the partner to the African National Congress, many people are oblivious to this, but the African National Congress is a front for the South African Communist Party, which does not stand in elections and is not represented in Parliament, but which does provide many of the African National Congress's parliamentary list. So the South African Communist Party is a feeder school for the African National Congress. They are one and the same entity with different names. And these guys are the brains behind the majority of the radical policies being implemented in South Africa. And they are not fools. They are highly intelligent people, very cunning, very shrewd, very, very, very devious people. And they're aware of this. They're aware that this mathematics doesn't make sense. Why are they doing it? They're doing it because it's not about the land. It's not about returning the land to the African man whose soul is tied to the soil. You know, they speak in these sort of stentorian terms. It is something else altogether, which we can go into if you like. The thing cannot work. We are going to follow Zimbabwe. Our employment is already at around about 50%. Our unemployment, I beg your pardon. We have remaining 3.1 million income taxpayers. This is a government figure. And we have, again, a government figure, 16.3 million people living off social grants, the dole, if you like.
Wow.
So 3.1 million people are providing the income tax base to pay social grants for 16.3 million people. There is already a crisis. We're already in the midst of a crisis, and it can only worsen if 10 million people are given 25,000 farms, and everybody's farming, 6 broccoli and 6 cabbages and 6 lettuce. It can only end badly.
Well, the big issue there is that you need the expertise and you need the understanding of how to farm, and it takes generations to do that because the land is very particular and you've got to understand the land. And, one of the points that one of the farmers made at Ermelo in that meeting was that he's been there for 5 generations and it doesn't take 2 or 3 years to actually learn how to farm the land. It takes generations passed on from one to the other, and they have that skill. And they also have the equipment. Now, once you expropriate the land, guess what's going to happen? The white farmers are going to sell all of their equipment, they're going to sell all their stock, yes, and they're going to get what cash they can. So you're going to have all these squatters who come in and take over the land, and it's going to be Zimbabwe 2.0. There's no question about that.
There's no question about it. And the other thing for people to bear in mind is, above and beyond the acumen, it requires inclination. For much of the past 24 years of multiracial democracy since the African National Congress, under the leadership of Nelson Mandela, won the first free and fair elections, as they're known, on the 27th of April 1994, we have seen a massive land redistribution campaign, huge. But it was revealed not so long ago by Dr. Anthea Jeffrey of the Institute for Race Relations in a report which has never been disputed. It's not the subject of any dispute whatsoever. It's a scholarly report by somebody with a PhD. In 92.7% of the cases, 92.7% of the successful applications for land, in other words, where a black man or family or clan or tribe has approached the government. Sorry, Scott, I'm going to have to ask you. My dogs.
I have one of those too.
Yeah, I've got two indefatigable Jack Russells. Anyway.
I have a Jack Russell too. I know all about Jack Russell. Anyway, carry on, yeah.
But to pick up where I left off, in 92.7% of the successful cases, in other words, in 92.7% of the instances in which a black man or family or clan or tribe has gone to the government and said, Scott Balson's great-great-grandfather knocked my poor old great-great-grandfather over the head and stole his land, and we want it back. In 92.7% of the cases, the successful cases, the successful applications, the applicants asked if they could have the money instead of the land.
Yeah, that's incredible, isn't it?
Which gives them the massive lie to this entire land thing. It's nonsense. It's a fiction. No matter what anybody tells you, the figures speak for themselves. It's not about the land. It's not about the soil. It's not about the history. It's about the opportunity.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Now, why did you instigate the elevation of the global debate over farmer tax if it is not your raison d'etre at all?
Because, as I mentioned earlier, I jumped the gun a little bit, Scott. We had to provide credibility to our argument that there's a crisis in South Africa in the absence of the global mainstream media paying any attention whatsoever to it. So we would go to people and we would say to them, look, these are the facts and the realities. This is the unemployment rate. This is the reduction in the income tax base. This is the number of people on social grants. This is the number of people being murdered on farms, and so on and so forth. So we used it to give credibility to our argument. It's not our core purpose at all.
Yeah, okay. And what is the true number of farm attacks and murders in South Africa? Because it seems to be very confusing. I mean,
yes, it's actually not confusing. It's very simple. Hitherto, the government has declined to release the statistics pertaining to farm attacks going back to 2007. The government refused, just said, we will not talk about the specifics of these murders and rapes and so on. However, under pressure, they finally released statistics on, I believe, Friday the 4th of May, and they were reported on Saturday the 5th of May, in which it was revealed that the average number of farm murders over the past 3 years has been 56 per year. Now, people might say, 56, that's nothing. The white racists, they deserve it. It's not that simple. The reality is that the number of white farmers remaining in South Africa has declined from about 120,000, as revealed by Ernst Janowski of Absa Bank's Agribusiness Division in about 1988, 120,000 to around about 25,000 now.
So it's actually increased 6 times.
The average rate of murder, Well, that's exactly the point. The average rate of murder in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and Western Europe is approximately 1. It varies from about zero point 0.8 to 1.7, that kind of thing. So in the Western world, excluding the USA, your chances of being murdered are about 1 in 100,000 per annum.
Yeah.
The rate of murder in the USA is 4.88 per 100,000 per annum. If you do the simple arithmetic around our farm murder rate, you'll soon discover that it's as high as 169, 170, 180 per 100,000 per annum. So whether people like it or they don't like it, the simple mathematical reality is that our farmers are practicing the world's most dangerous profession. Indeed, the farm murder rate, and we have proven this previously in seminars, we've provided the statistics, we've had help from other people, independent people, using independent sources. Our farm murder rate is higher than the fatality rate of American soldiers on the front line in Iraq or Afghanistan. Implausible as it may seem, unbelievable as it may seem, it's a mathematical fact.
That's crazy. You talk about this being on the front line, and Suidlanders being a civil defense force. If the whites hypothetically were to set up an enclave, which would be a huge enclave, it would be like, stretching across the Free State and, right up to the northern part of the Cape and part of the Eastern Cape, where the Bantu and Nguni tribes have no claim to prior occupation of land. If they were to set that up, the South African Defence Force is in such a mess that I think that because of what's happening now with China, giving loans so that they can come in and take over strategic parts of South Africa's economy, I think that if white South Africans got their smarts together and started talking to the Trump campaign, and saying, hey guys, will you support us? Because the last thing in the world that the US want is China to have Simonstown as a naval base, because that's kind of the control of that part of the ocean.
Yes.
I really believe that if the leadership, maybe it's a DA, maybe it's COPE, maybe whoever it is, but if they were to sort of get together and look at this whole argument that, hey, the Malema thing is, we were here first, you stole our land. Now, they weren't in anywhere east of Lesotho. They weren't, because it was too dry to have cattle. You had to drill boreholes and get water out so you could actually maintain livestock. They were in KwaZulu-Natal. They weren't east of Lesotho. And I know this because I'm a historian and I've done a lot of research on this whole subject. That basically, if you look at the whole of the Cape and the whole of the Orange Free State, there were no Bantu there at all. There were Griqua, there were Khoi, and there were San. And the Khoi basically are no longer in existence because they all died through smallpox. The interracial side of the Khoi, which is the Griqua, they're great communities of Griqua, and particularly in places like Plettenberg Bay, where their principal chief, Alan Lafleur, lives, at Kranshoek, near Plettenberg Bay. I mean, these were the guys who actually had prior occupation, even before the Boers came through. So, there was no Bantu there at all. And what I think is that if you look at the EFF and the ANC and the BLF saying, well, you stole our land, they weren't there. Now, if you could form some sort of association with the Griqua, which is, works win-win. I know the Griqua very well. I wrote their book, their history book, Children of the Mist. And if you were to form some kind of association where you work together and you just said, hey guys, you know, you Bantu were never in this part of South Africa. We're going to now take it as our own because we are the original South Africans in this area. Now, that I believe there is no way that there could be an argument against that because it's a fact. Now, if you did that and if you involved the US, what you'd be doing is cutting China out from taking the whole of Africa and make it a colony of China. And I'm sure that the US would really embrace that.
Yeah, look, they're a little bit restricted by political correctness. You know, there is a line that they can't cross. There are people engaged in that very initiative. The VVA, Verenigde Vryheidsalliansie, United Liberty Alliance is the English translation. They're engaging in precisely that process under the leadership of Hein Marx. But it's not really our mandate, you know. That would be really difficult for us to justify as a civil defense organization participating in that process. But what you say is true. You know, west of Lesotho, particularly west of the Great Fish River, there was no occupation by black people. Indeed, the first meeting between whites and blacks occurred on the east bank of the Great Fish River in modern day, or at modern day Somerset East, between Captain Robert J. Gordon, later Colonel Robert J. Gordon, in 1777. And white South Africans, the first white settlers, arrived on the 6th of April, 1652. Those are the first permanent settlers, not the first white people to
That's
set foot.
over 150 years later.
125 years later, 1652 to 1777,
125 years,
years later. Yeah, so that's indicative of what you're saying. I mean, what you're saying is accurate and correct and true. It's just that simple. Indeed, the Xhosa chiefs signed a treaty in 1795 acknowledging that the Bantu peoples had never crossed the river, and therefore in perpetuity they would honor the river as a border in perpetuity between the whites and the blacks. They then broke that agreement, I think, if I remember correctly, 9 times. But nevertheless, the fact remains that they acknowledged that they had never been west of the Great Fish River. So yeah, I think I don't have much more to say except that you're correct.
Now, one of my subscribers had a member of her family murdered at Nelspruit a few days ago on the 2nd of October. You've probably heard about that murder. Of course.
I would have heard about it. I'm not exactly sure, but I get all of the reports, yes.
Yeah, his name was Johan Bosman. And,
right.
He was just shot by 3 invaders who just came into its house, and the whole idea is to try and intimidate the family to leave. And that's
right.
It's almost like an extension of land expropriation. But of course, Ramaphosa would have you believe that there are no farm murders in South Africa. He claimed this last month.
It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah, but he claimed...
It's nonsense. It's not true.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But this is what he said last month while in the US. And you know what? Not one of the mainstream media have touched this awful killing near Nelspruit of Johan Bosman. But I do have a recent video on my channel in which a family member of the murdered man talks about the impact on the wider family. And we discussed this just now. Now, compare that with the way the international coverage of that stupid white farmer, or the 2 stupid white farmers who tried to intimidate an African by putting him in a coffin, just to intimidate him. Their motive was not murder, but to stop the African from stealing from them. And they are now in prison.
Yeah, he was stealing copper cables.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly what he was doing. And if you think about murder, whites being murdered, it's not news. But someone being put in a coffin becomes a dramatic, huge international story. That's how biased and fake the mainstream media are.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no question about it. Look, they didn't even close the damn coffin.
No, they didn't. No, they didn't. I know.
And this is a guy, a repeat offender,
Yeah.
stealing the copper electricity cables that they need to run their irrigation points and dairy. It's a serious thing. Because the police lack the acumen and the competence and the will, the enthusiasm, the interest in putting a stop to crime, these guys from to time do get vigilantistic. It's a reality. You would do the same. I would do the same. I would have done the same. I would have blown a gasket, seeing that I was going to lose R250,000 again this month because some bastard is stealing the copper electricity cables again this month. I don't say it's right. I say that we flawed human beings would do that. I would do that.
Yeah.
Then you murder a guy in cold blood and you get 18 years, or you get off, or you rape a child to death and the media doesn't report it.
Yeah.
Or what kind of a world are we living in?
Or you actually,
we are living in.
You give a young child boiling water to drink while the parents watch. I mean, that is just shocking. The sort of stuff that they do. I mean, it really is horrific. But let's get off that because I mean, I'm really trying to look at the positive things here about Suidlanders. What do you feel the impact of people like Malema is having by fomenting racial hatred against the whites? I mean, that is something that you see all the time.
There are no two ways that it must be having an impact, particularly on poorly educated, simple-minded people. There is a tier of the populace which is very much peasant. And let me put it to you this way, just in case what I'm saying sounds like a typically white, racist, evil thing to say. The Prince Regent of South Africa's oldest tribe said to me, to my face, in his office during a casual conversation about this, in our culture, Simon, when you say something like that, the person hearing it believes that they have a responsibility to respond and that, how did he put it, that they are part of the solution. So in other words, when Julius Malema says, kill the farmer's the bad guy, people believe that the right thing to do is to kill the farmer. And unfortunately, we live in a world which is dominated by the Western European standards of intellectualism and so on and so forth. And so people say, oh, well, nobody believes that. Oh, it's not as if, and it's absolutely not true. I'm very sorry to say it's just not true. There are many people who are inspired to commit murder and rape at the instigation of Julius Malema and Jacob Zuma and others. That's acknowledged by black people, as I've just demonstrated to you.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And what other material factors within South Africa convince Suidlanders that there is bound to be a crisis?
Our unemployment rate and its rapid growth are unsustainable. The decline in our currency will lead to a worsening of conditions amongst the poorest of the poor. The ongoing touch and go, skating on thin ice, sailing close to the wind, near inability of our government to pay its social grants will lead to a crisis sooner or later. the other big thing is what we've just been talking about. You cannot inspire people to commit murder and rape so unrelentingly over so many years without building up. And we believe that the government and the EFF are creating a pent-up frustration and anger amongst black people towards white people. If we have a massive electricity failure, as we have had in recent years, during winter, and let's say it affects the pumps at some water pumping stations, and people wake up in the morning cold with no clean running water, we believe that such a spark could set alight the fuse and indeed the barrel of gunpowder that will lead to this country being plunged into civil war. Wow. We are teetering on the brink.
Wow. So what is your plan to contend with such a crisis?
Our plan entails the removal of, not by force, voluntarily, inviting people to leave built-up areas which are unfavorable, towards a part of South Africa which is more or less unknown. Just a handful of people know it, but we have a system of disseminating the information towards a part of South Africa which is demographically favorable to our people, and which is well removed from cities and is not heavily dependent upon advanced 21st century Western-style infrastructure, simply to remove them from a crisis where under international law an identifiable ethnic group can create a perimeter and defend it.
Well, that wouldn't be too hard, because the South African Defence Force apparently is a joke. And if you look at history, the Boers really knew how to fight. So I think that would be a wonder.
Yeah, our fear is that... Sorry, I beg your pardon, Scott. I was just going to say our fear, though, is that they will receive support from the Chinese. It might sound a little bit improbable to listeners, viewers.
That's exactly what I was getting to earlier when I said that, you know, what the white South Africans should do is look at setting up a country in the southern part of South Africa. And actually this Sunday night I'll be going live and I'll be talking about this particular issue and showing the area of South Africa where the Bantu had no involvement at all. And it's about half of South Africa. I mean, it's a huge area. And, you know, the last thing the US, and you've got Donald Trump in there at the moment, the last thing that the US want is for China to come in and take over South Africa. So, you know, what I would be looking at is actually having a commission go to the White House and saying, hey guys, you know, we represent the whites in South Africa. We want to set up this separate country. Here are the reasons why we want to do it. You know, and this is why I've always been advocating the importance of actually entering into dialogue with people like the Griqua people and the Coloureds in the Cape, the leaders there, because they are actually very pro the white perspective. You know, they're not Bantu. They have a totally different perspective on things, and I know them very well. I've been dealing with them for years. Now, if a commission went to the US and said, "Hey guys, we're looking at doing this, and we're going to stop China coming in," I can tell you what, I reckon the US would come in behind them.
Maybe we believe that the Chinese will use civil war as a vector to get themselves more firmly ensconced in South Africa.
Look, there's a civil war going on now. We know it. It's between black and black at the moment. But the collateral damage are the whites. What the whites need to look at doing is actually being one step ahead of the game and actually looking at how they can actually, get support from a country like the US.
Yeah, well, the Verenigde Vryheidsalliansie, that is to say the United Liberty Alliance under the leadership of Hein Marx, is doing that now.
Good, because I really think that is the direction, because China is definitely trying to take the whole of Africa as a colony. I mean, that's what they're going to do. And they're going to say, yeah, we'll call it Azania, we'll call it whatever you like, but you've got to give us all your utilities and your ports and your airports and whatever. And then they're going to just treat them like rubbish, because that's what the Chinese do.
Yeah.
Anyway, going a bit further. Okay, for many white South Africans, the idea of migrating to a safer country is out of the question because of family. They've got a lot of family there, or finance, or age. How can they contact your organization to become involved and be part of Suidlanders? I'll be putting a link to the Suidlanders website.
Thank you very much, Scott. It's very easy. If anybody goes onto our website, www.suidlanders.co.za, www.suidlanders.co.za. You said you're going to put the link. I beg your pardon, Scott. If anybody goes onto our website and goes into the contact tab, clicks on the contact tab, there they can see a long list of leaders all across South Africa. Get in touch with your local leader and ask him what you need to do to slot into his group. Go to a meeting, perhaps have a private conversation with him, whatever he's up for, or just a telephone conversation. There are ways and means to slot into the preparation of Suidlanders' National Emergency Plan through the leaders that we have all across South Africa, and their contact details are available on the contacts page of our website, whose link you said you would put up.
Okay, cool. Now, I've got to say in closing, Simon, that I've always been an advocate for Suidlanders. A lot of my videos I say, hey, Suidlanders is a group that can actually help protect the white population in South Africa, and you'll see that in the videos. And in closing, I'm just appealing to all those people who listen to my channel, who follow my channel, to contact Suidlanders and become involved and see how they can actually look to securing their future in South Africa.
Thank you very, very much, Scott.
You're very welcome, and it's been a great pleasure speaking to you, Simon. Look, I have to tell you, I've watched hundreds of your videos, and I admire you greatly, and I admire what Suidlanders is doing. I'm a retiree, so I have a lot of time on my hands. So my main focus today is to try and help white South Africans and offer them options, and those options often include migrating out of the country. And I'm happy to say that quite a few of the people who followed my channel have actually found new homes outside South Africa, and they're very, very happy they have. And look, it's what you want. I mean, some people want to get out there, and all I'm trying to do is help people and give them options. So if you want to promote my channel on Suidlanders, or if you want to just tell people about my channel, it speaks for itself.
We'll do so, Scott. We'll definitely do so.
Alrighty. Lovely speaking to you.
All right, Scott. Have a lovely evening. Thank you very much for this opportunity. We value it.
You're very welcome, and it's been wonderful speaking to you, and I'm sure we'll speak again soon.
I hope so, Scott.
Okay, take care, Simon.
Thanks. Cheers, Scott.